Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you strengthen your will. Every time you push through discomfort instead of taking the easy path, you forge your will. Every time you choose discipline over distraction, commitment over convenience, persistence over giving up, you're tempering your will in the fire of action, making it harder, stronger, more resilient. Marden tells us that the development of will begins with a clear and definite purpose. You cannot build an iron will around vague wishes or half-hearted desires. Your purpose must be specific, compelling, so important to you that you're willing to sacrifice comfort, overcome fear, and persist through doubt. This purpose becomes your North Star, the fixed point that guides you when everything else is uncertain, when storms rage and darkness falls and you're tempted to give up. What is your purpose? Not what you think it should be, not what others expect of you, but what genuinely sets your soul on fire. What would you pursue even if success wasn't guaranteed? What contribution do you want to make to this world? What legacy do you want to leave? These aren't light questions. They require deep reflection, honest self-examination, and the courage to admit what truly matters to you, even if it seems impossible, even if others don't understand. Once you've identified your purpose, the next step in developing an iron will is to make an unconditional commitment to that purpose. Not a commitment with escape clauses or contingency plans or backup options, but an absolute, all-in, burn-the-boats commitment that says, "This is what I will do, and I will persist until I succeed or until my last breath, whichever comes first." This kind of commitment terrifies most people because it requires vulnerability. It requires admitting what you truly want and therefore opening yourself up to the possibility of failure, disappointment, and judgment. But Marden teaches us that this fear is exactly what separates those who achieve greatness from those who live lives of quiet regret. The iron will says, "I would rather try and fail than never try at all. I would rather pour everything I have into something meaningful and come up short than play it safe and wonder what might have been." The development of an iron will also requires that you learn to control your thoughts, because your thoughts shape your reality more powerfully than any external circumstance ever could. Marden emphasizes that successful people don't have fewer challenges or obstacles than unsuccessful people. They simply think about those challenges differently. Where one person sees an insurmountable barrier, another sees an interesting puzzle to solve. Where one person sees evidence of their inadequacy, another sees an opportunity to grow and develop new capabilities. Your mind is constantly telling you stories about what's possible, what you're capable of, what you deserve, and whether you can succeed. The tragedy is that most people accept these stories as truth without questioning them, without examining whether they're based on facts or fears, on reality or outdated programming from childhood experiences or societal conditioning. Developing an iron will means becoming the author of your mental narratives instead of their victim. It means catching yourself when you think, "I can't do this," and consciously replacing it with, "I haven't figured this out yet, but I will." It means noticing when you think, "This is too hard," and choosing to think instead, "This is challenging, and that's exactly what I need to grow." It means rejecting thoughts that diminish you and deliberately cultivating thoughts that empower you. This isn't about positive thinking in the shallow sense of pretending problems don't exist or chanting affirmations while ignoring reality. This is about clear, accurate thinking that acknowledges challenges while maintaining unwavering faith in your ability to overcome them. It's about seeing obstacles without magnifying them, about recognizing your current limitations while refusing to believe they're permanent. Marden shares numerous examples of people who transformed their lives by transforming their thinking. The sickly child who was told he'd never be healthy, who decided to reject that verdict and instead committed to building his body through rigorous exercise and discipline, eventually becoming a symbol of physical vitality and even serving as President of the United States. That was Theodore Roosevelt. The woman told she'd never walk again after polio, who refused to accept that diagnosis, and through sheer determination not only walked but became one of the most influential figures in American history. That was Eleanor Roosevelt. These people didn't have special powers or supernatural abilities. They simply refused to let other people's opinions or even medical diagnoses define what was possible for them. They took control of their thoughts, aligned those thoughts with their purposes, and then backed those thoughts with relentless, consistent action. Action, Marden tells us, is where an iron will proves itself. You can have the clearest purpose and the most committed mindset, But without action, consistent daily action toward your goals, nothing changes. And this is where most people stumble. Not because they don't want to act, but because they wait for the perfect moment, the perfect plan, the perfect circumstances, and that moment never comes. An iron will doesn't wait for perfect conditions. It acts now, with what you have, where you are. It understands that action creates clarity, that you learn by doing, that the path forward reveals itself one step at a time, not all at once. Most successful endeavors didn't succeed according to the original plan. They succeeded because someone started, learned from what happened, adjusted, and kept moving forward. Think about the person who wants to write a book but waits for inspiration to strike, for the perfect story to emerge fully formed, for circumstances to align. Years pass, and the book remains unwritten. Now consider the person who commits to writing just one page every day, regardless of how they feel, whether it's good or not, whether anyone will ever read it. In 1 year, they have a book. In 5 years, they have several. The difference isn't talent or inspiration. It's the iron will that says, I will act today, now, imperfectly, but persistently. Marden emphasizes that developing an iron will requires you to embrace discomfort as a teacher rather than an enemy. Every time you feel resistance, every time your mind offers you excuses or your body craves ease, you're standing at a fork in the road. One path leads to immediate comfort and long-term regret. The other leads to temporary discomfort and lasting strength. The iron will always chooses the harder path because it knows that's where growth lives. This doesn't mean being harsh with yourself or pushing beyond reasonable limits into self-destruction. It means learning to distinguish between the discomfort of growth and the pain of actual harm, between the resistance your ego throws up to keep you safe in familiar territory and genuine warning signals from your body or intuition. Most of the time, what feels unbearable is actually just unfamiliar. The discomfort of waking up early to work on your goals, of having difficult conversations, of doing work that challenges you, of facing your fears. These discomforts won't kill you, they'll strengthen you. But only if you push through them consistently, building your tolerance for discomfort the way you'd build muscle through progressive resistance training. The beautiful paradox that Marden reveals is that the more you embrace discomfort, the more comfortable you become with being uncomfortable. And this expanded comfort zone is what separates achievers from dreamers. The person with an iron will has trained themselves to function effectively even when conditions are far from ideal, even when they're tired, stressed, uncertain, or afraid. They've learned that waiting to feel motivated or inspired or confident is a trap, because those feelings come and go unpredictably, and if you only act when they're present, you'll accomplish very little. Instead, the iron will operates on commitment rather than emotion, on discipline rather than desire, on the recognition that feelings are temporary visitors that shouldn't be allowed to dictate your actions. You can feel afraid and act courageously anyway. You can feel tired and work productively anyway. You can feel doubtful and persist faithfully anyway. This is the essence of an iron will, the ability to maintain direction regardless of internal weather patterns. Marden also addresses the critical importance of persistence, of continuing even when results don't appear. Even when you feel like you're making no progress, even when everyone around you questions your choices. The iron will understands that growth often happens beneath the surface long before it becomes visible, that you can be making tremendous progress even when nothing seems to be changing. Consider the Chinese bamboo tree, which is watered and fertilized for 5 years with no visible growth. Nothing breaks through the soil, no sprout appears, and then suddenly in the 6th year, it grows 90 feet in just 6 weeks. Did the tree grow 90 feet in 6 weeks? Or was it growing all along, developing the root system that would eventually support its spectacular rise? Your efforts are like those 5 years of invisible growth, building the foundation for breakthroughs that others will call overnight success. The people who quit are usually just steps away from breakthrough, but they'll never know because they stopped too soon. They gave up in the 4th year, in the 11th month, in the final mile, not realizing that persistence just a little longer would have changed everything. The iron will says, I will persist 1 more day, 1 more week, 1 more month, 1 more year, on as long as it takes, because I'm committed to my purpose and my purpose doesn't have an expiration date. Now, Marden is realistic about the challenges of maintaining an iron will. He acknowledges that you'll face doubts, that you'll have moments of weakness, that you'll encounter circumstances that test every ounce of your determination. The iron will doesn't mean you never feel fear or doubt or fatigue. It means you act despite these feelings. You continue even when every fiber of your being wants to stop. This is where having a clear purpose becomes absolutely essential, because when willpower alone isn't enough, when discipline feels depleted, when you're running on empty, your purpose pulls you forward. You continue not because it feels good, but because stopping would mean betraying what matters most to you, abandoning the contribution you're meant to make, settling for less than you're capable of becoming. Marden encourages readers to study the lives of great achievers, not to worship them, but to recognize that they were human beings who struggled just as we do, who faced obstacles just as daunting as ours, who felt fear and doubt and the temptation to quit. The difference is they kept going. They developed their will through practice, through repeatedly choosing action over paralysis, courage over comfort, persistence over giving up. One of the most powerful aspects of an iron will is how it compounds over time. Every time you keep a commitment to yourself, you build evidence that you're trustworthy, that you do what you say you'll do. This self-trust is the foundation of confidence, and confidence makes future challenges easier to face. Conversely, every time you break a promise to yourself, you erode that trust, making it harder to believe you'll follow through next time. This is why Marden advises starting with small, manageable commitments and honoring them without exception. If you commit to exercising for 10 minutes daily, do it every single day, no matter what. If you commit to reading for 15 minutes, reading one page of professional development, making one sales call, writing one paragraph, do it with the reliability of the sunrise. These small acts of integrity build your will like deposits in a bank account, creating a reserve of determination you can draw on when larger challenges arise. The iron will also requires that you take full responsibility for your life, that you stop blaming circumstances or other people or bad luck for where you are, and instead recognize that you have far more power than you've been using. This isn't about denying that real obstacles exist or that some people face greater challenges than others. It's about recognizing that your response to your circumstances is always within your control, and that response determines your trajectory more than the circumstances themselves. Marden shares story after story of people who overcame incredible disadvantages, poverty, lack of education, disabilities, discrimination, loss, trauma, not because these things didn't affect them, but because they refused to let these things be the end of their story. They took responsibility for creating the life they wanted despite their starting point, understanding that while you can't always control what happens to you, you can always control what you do about it. This responsibility extends to your education and growth. An iron will doesn't wait for someone else to provide training or opportunity. It seeks out knowledge, it finds mentors, it learns from books and courses and experiences. It treats every challenge as a chance to develop new capabilities. In Marden's time, people with tremendous ambition but limited means would walk miles to borrow books, study by candlelight after long days of physical labor, apprentice themselves to masters in their field, all because they understood that no one else was responsible for their development. Today, we have access to more information and opportunity than at any point in human history. Yet many people remain stuck because they're waiting for someone to hand them success, to give them permission, to make it easy. The iron will recognizes that you must become your own benefactor, your own university, your own motivator, that the responsibility for your growth and success rests squarely on your shoulders and nowhere else. When you truly embrace this responsibility, something shifts inside you. You stop feeling like a victim of circumstances and start feeling like the architect of your destiny. You stop waiting for life to happen to you and start making life happen through you. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What can I learn from this? How can I grow through this? How can I use this experience to become stronger, wiser, more capable?" This shift in perspective is itself an act of will, a choice to interpret your experiences in ways that empower rather than diminish you, to extract value from every situation rather than just suffering through difficult ones. The person with an iron will becomes skilled at this kind of mental alchemy, transforming the lead of hardship into the gold of wisdom, strength, and resilience. Marden also discusses the relationship between iron will and character, emphasizing that true strength of will must be directed toward worthy ends and expressed through ethical means. An iron will used in service of selfish or harmful purposes isn't admirable, it's dangerous. The goal isn't simply to develop determination, but to align that determination with principles, with values, with a vision of contribution that makes the world better. This is why purpose must be rooted in something larger than personal gain. Why the most powerful motivations involve service, impact, and legacy, rather than just accumulation or status. When your iron will is devoted to something meaningful, something that helps others or advances humanity or expresses beauty or truth, you tap into a deeper source of motivation that sustains you through challenges that would break purely selfish ambition. Character, Marden tells us, is built through the daily decisions you make when no one is watching, when cutting corners would be easy, when integrity is inconvenient. Every time you choose the right action over the easy action, you strengthen your character. Every time you keep your word even when it costs you. Every time you do quality work even when no one will know the difference. Every time you treat others with respect even when they can't help you, you're building a character that can support an iron will. Because here's what many people miss. An iron will without character eventually self-destructs. You might achieve short-term success through determination alone, but lasting success, the kind that brings genuine fulfillment and stands the test of time, requires that your will be grounded in integrity, honesty, fairness, and concern for others. Think about it this way. If you develop tremendous willpower but use it to manipulate people, cut ethical corners, or pursue purely selfish ends, you might accumulate wealth or status or power, but you'll build your success on a foundation of sand. Eventually, the lack of character catches up with you, relationships fall apart, reputation crumbles, the success you fought so hard to achieve becomes hollow and unsatisfying. But when you build your iron will on a foundation of strong character, when you pursue worthy goals through ethical means, when you treat people with respect and keep your commitments and do what's right even when it's hard, you create something that lasts. You build a life of genuine meaning and contribution. You earn the trust and respect of others. You sleep well at night knowing your success came through honorable means. You create a legacy you can be proud of. The book explores how an iron will transforms not just what you achieve, but who you become. The process of pursuing challenging goals with unwavering determination develops qualities that enrich every area of your life: courage, resilience, resourcefulness, patience, humility, wisdom. You become someone who can be counted on, who delivers on commitments, who faces difficulties without falling apart, who inspires others through your example. These qualities don't develop in comfort or ease. They're forged in the fire of challenge, shaped through struggle, refined through repeated testing. Every time you face a difficult situation and choose to respond with courage rather than fear, with persistence rather than surrender, with integrity rather than expediency, you're becoming a better version of yourself. You're developing capacities that will serve you for the rest of your life. Marden provides guidance on maintaining your will during the inevitable setbacks and failures that accompany any worthy pursuit. The iron will doesn't mean you never fail. It means you never quit failing forward, extracting lessons from every setback, using defeats as information rather than identity, bouncing back stronger and wiser from every knockdown. The people who ultimately succeed are usually the ones who failed the most, not because failure leads to success, but because they attempted the most, learned the most, adjusted the most, and persisted the longest. Every successful person you admire has a history of failures they don't talk about much. Rejection letters, bankrupt businesses, broken relationships, projects that flopped, criticism from people whose opinions mattered to them, moments of deep doubt and despair. What made them successful wasn't avoiding these experiences, but moving through them without letting them become stopping points. They felt the pain, processed the lessons, and got back in the arena. Their iron will wasn't about being impervious to hardship. It was about being unconquerable by hardship, about maintaining core commitment to their purpose even when specific strategies failed, even when the path forward was unclear, even when success seemed impossible. This is one of the most liberating truths about developing an iron will, that failure becomes less frightening when you understand it's not an endpoint but a stepping stone, not a verdict on your worth, but feedback on your approach. When you're no longer terrified of failure, when you accept it as a natural part of any ambitious endeavor, you become willing to take risks, to try things that might not work, to experiment and innovate and push boundaries. And this willingness to risk failure is what opens up possibilities that cautious people never experience. The biggest breakthroughs, the most meaningful achievements, the greatest contributions almost always involve risking failure, sometimes repeatedly. If you're not willing to fail, you're not willing to succeed at anything truly significant. One of the most valuable lessons Marden offers is about the compound effect of small daily actions aligned with your purpose. You don't need to make enormous leaps or dramatic changes to transform your life. You need to make small improvements consistently over time. The person who improves 1% each day is nearly 37 times better after a year through the power of compounding, while the person who declines 1% each day ends up at nearly zero. Your daily habits are either building the life you want or eroding it. There's no neutral ground. Every day you're either strengthening your will or weakening it, moving toward your goals or away from them, becoming more of who you want to be or less. This might seem overwhelming, but it's actually empowering because it means that today, right now, you can start moving in the right direction. And if you continue that direction consistently, your entire life changes. The Iron Will understands that success is not an event, but a process. Not a destination, but a direction. Not something that happens to you, but something you create through thousands of small decisions that accumulate over time. It's the decision to get up when the alarm rings instead of hitting snooze. It's the choice to do the work you committed to instead of scrolling mindlessly. It's the discipline to save instead of spend, to practice instead of procrastinate, to show up instead of make excuses. None of these individual decisions seems particularly significant in the moment. Hitting snooze one morning won't ruin your life. Scrolling social media for 30 minutes won't destroy your dreams. Skipping one workout won't make you unhealthy. But it's not about the single decision. It's about the pattern, the trajectory, the cumulative effect of hundreds and thousands of small choices all pointing in the same direction. When those small choices consistently point toward your goals, toward growth, toward becoming your best self, they compound into transformation. When they consistently point toward comfort, avoidance, instant gratification, they compound into stagnation or decline. The Iron Will is built through consciously choosing the former pattern over and over until it becomes automatic, until doing the right thing becomes easier than doing the wrong thing, until your habits align with your ambitions. Marden emphasizes the importance of guarding your mental and emotional environment as you develop your Iron Will. You become like the people you spend the most time with. You're influenced by the content you consume. You're shaped by the conversations you participate in. If you surround yourself with people who make excuses, who blame others, who settle for mediocrity, who mock ambition, your will slowly weakens no matter how strong it started. Conversely, if you deliberately cultivate relationships with people who challenge you to grow, who hold high standards, who are pursuing meaningful goals, who celebrate your victories and support you through challenges, your will strengthens. If you feed your mind with books and ideas that expand your thinking, inspire your action, and reinforce your commitment to your purpose, you're fueling your determination. This isn't about being elitist or abandoning people who struggle. It's about recognizing that you can't pour from an empty cup, that you need to build your own strength before you can effectively help others build theirs. It's about being intentional regarding who and what has access to your attention and energy, understanding that these are your most precious resources and they should be invested wisely. Think of your mind as a garden. Whatever you plant, there will grow. Whatever you water will flourish. Whatever you allow to take root will eventually dominate the landscape. If you plant seeds of negativity, consume content that reinforces limiting beliefs, surround yourself with people who drain your energy and discourage your dreams, you'll harvest a garden of weeds that choke out your potential. But if you deliberately plant seeds of possibility, water them with inspiring content and empowering relationships, protect your mental garden from toxic influences, you'll harvest a life of achievement, fulfillment, and contribution. This requires vigilance because the default path, the path of least resistance, often leads toward mediocrity, toward time-wasting distractions, toward relationships and content that don't serve your highest good. The book also addresses the role of faith in developing an iron will, not necessarily religious faith, though that can be part of it, but faith in yourself, in your purpose, in the possibility of achievement, in the basic goodness and order of the universe. This faith isn't blind optimism or denial of difficulty. It's a deep conviction that your efforts matter, that persistence pays off, that you have what it takes to overcome whatever challenges arise. This faith gets tested constantly because evidence to the contrary often appears before evidence of success. You're working hard but not seeing results yet. You're making sacrifices but not experiencing benefits yet. You're taking risks but not seeing rewards yet. During these times, faith is what keeps you moving forward. The belief that breakthrough is coming even though you can't see it yet. That your efforts are building something even though it's not visible yet. Marden shares that this faith is strengthened by honoring your commitments, by reflecting on past challenges you've overcome, by connecting with your deepest purpose regularly, by surrounding yourself with reminders of what you're working toward and why it matters. Faith isn't something you have or don't have. It's something you build and maintain through practice. When you keep a promise to yourself, you prove to yourself that you're trustworthy, that your commitment means something, and this proof builds faith in your ability to achieve what you set out to achieve. When you reflect on past victories, even small ones, you remind yourself that you've overcome obstacles before and can do so again. And this reminder strengthens faith in your resilience. When you reconnect with your purpose, remembering why you're on this journey and what you hope to create, you renew your faith that the struggle is worthwhile. As you develop your iron will, Marden warns against becoming rigid or inflexible. An iron will is strong but not brittle, determined but not stubborn. There's a difference between persistence toward your core purpose and stubbornness about specific strategies. Sometimes the path you're on isn't working and needs to be changed. Sometimes feedback from reality tells you to adjust your approach. Sometimes what you thought you wanted turns out to be different from what you actually need. The iron will maintains commitment to the destination while remaining flexible about the route. It persists with core values while adapting tactics. It holds the vision while adjusting the plan. This requires wisdom, discernment, and the humility to admit when something isn't working and the courage to try something different. Wisdom comes from paying attention to results, from being honest about what's working and what isn't, from being willing to learn from mistakes rather than defending them. Discernment comes from distinguishing between temporary obstacles that should be overcome and fundamental flaws in approach that require change. Humility comes from recognizing that you don't have all the answers, that you'll make mistakes, that you need feedback and course correction. The person with an iron will isn't too proud to change course when necessary, isn't so attached to their current approach that they keep banging their head against a wall that will never break. They're committed to the goal but flexible about methods, persistent in effort but adaptable in strategy, determined to succeed but wise enough to adjust their path when the current one clearly isn't leading where they want to go. Throughout the book, Marden returns again and again to the idea that developing an iron will is the most important work you can do because everything else in your life flows from it. Your relationships improve when you have the will to communicate honestly, to make and keep commitments, to show up consistently. Your health improves when you have the will to make better choices, to exercise regularly, to manage stress effectively. Your finances improve when you have the will to delay gratification, to invest in yourself, to take calculated risks. Your career advances when you have the will to develop skills, to seek challenges, to persist through obstacles. An iron will is the engine that powers every other improvement, the foundation upon which everything else is built. Without it, knowledge doesn't help because you won't apply it. Opportunity doesn't matter because you won't seize it. Potential doesn't count because you won't fulfill it. With it, you become unstoppable, not because you avoid obstacles, but because you overcome them. Not because life gets easier, but because you get stronger. Consider how an iron will transforms your relationship with time. Most people treat time as something that happens to them. They let hours slip by in distraction. They wonder where the day went. They feel perpetually busy but unproductive. They arrive at the end of their lives with regrets about all they didn't do. The person with an iron will treats time as their most valuable resource, something to be invested intentionally in activities that matter, something to be protected from waste and triviality. They understand that time is the currency of life, that how you spend your hours is how you spend your life, that you can't save time or store it up, you can only use it well or poorly in each moment. So they become ruthless about eliminating time wasters, strategic about priorities, disciplined about focus, intentional about how each day is structured and spent. This doesn't mean becoming joyless or obsessed with productivity. It means recognizing that time spent on what truly matters, including rest, relationships, recreation, brings genuine satisfaction, while time wasted on empty distractions brings regret. The iron will gives you the strength to align your time use with your values, to say no to things that don't serve your purpose so you can say yes to things that do. The relationship between iron will and decision-making is also crucial. Every decision you make either moves you toward your goals or away from them, strengthens your character or weakens it, builds the life you want or erodes it. Small decisions compound over time into large outcomes, which is why Marden emphasizes that how you make decisions matters enormously. People with weak wills make decisions based on feelings, mood, convenience, what's easy or comfortable in the moment. Their choices are inconsistent, driven by impulse rather than intention, reactive rather than proactive. They know what they should do but don't do it when it conflicts with what they feel like doing, and over time this pattern creates a life that doesn't reflect their stated values or aspirations. People with iron wills make decisions based on commitment, on their purpose and values, on who they want to become and what they want to create. Their choices are consistent, aligned with long-term goals even when that requires short-term sacrifice, proactive rather than reactive. They do what they committed to do regardless of how they feel, and over time this pattern creates a life that embodies their deepest values and highest aspirations. The beauty is that decision-making is a skill that improves with practice. The more often you make decisions aligned with your iron will, aligned with your purpose and values rather than immediate comfort, the easier those decisions become. Neural pathways strengthen, habits form, what once required enormous willpower becomes almost automatic, freeing up that willpower for new challenges. Marden's message is ultimately one of hope and empowerment, the belief that no matter where you are right now, no matter what you've done or failed to do in the past, no matter what challenges you face or limitations you perceive, you can develop an iron will starting today, and that iron will can transform your life completely. You're not stuck, you're not limited by your past, you're not destined to repeat the same patterns forever. Every moment offers a fresh choice, a new beginning, another opportunity to decide who you want to be and what you want to create. The person you've been doesn't determine the person you can become. Your history doesn't dictate your destiny. Your circumstances don't define your possibilities. What matters is what you choose right now, in this moment, and then the next moment and the next, building an iron will one decision at a time. As you develop this iron will, you'll discover something remarkable, that the life you're capable of living is far greater than anything you've imagined, that the contribution you can make is more significant than you believed possible, that the person you can become is stronger, wiser, more capable than you ever thought. The iron will doesn't just help you achieve goals, it transforms your entire sense of what's achievable, expanding your vision of what's possible as you grow into someone equal to larger challenges. This transformation doesn't happen overnight. It unfolds gradually through consistent practice, through repeatedly choosing courage over comfort, action over hesitation, persistence over surrender. Some days will feel easy, like you're flowing effortlessly toward your goals. Other days will feel impossibly hard, like you're pushing a boulder uphill. Both days matter equally, both days count, both days are building your will. On the easy days, you're proving to yourself that you can maintain momentum, that you can build on success, that you can keep going when things are working. On the hard days, you're proving something even more important, that you can persist when things aren't working, that your commitment doesn't depend on circumstances, that you have the strength to continue even when you don't feel like it. These hard days are actually the most valuable because they're the ones that forge your will into something truly unbreakable. The hard days are when your iron will is tested and tempered, when the gap between who you are and who you're becoming feels widest, when continuing requires everything you've got. These are the days that separate people who achieve their dreams from people who abandon them, the days that determine whether your iron will is genuine or just an idea you liked but didn't fully commit to. And here's what you need to understand. Everyone has hard days. Everyone faces moments when continuing seems impossible, when giving up feels so appealing, when the voice in your head whispers that it's okay to quit, that you've tried hard enough, that maybe this goal wasn't meant for you. The people who succeed aren't immune to these moments. They simply refuse to let these moments become the end of their story. They acknowledge the difficulty, they feel the exhaustion, they recognize how much easier quitting would be, and then they take one more step anyway. They tell themselves, I can persist through today. I can do what needs to be done right now. Tomorrow I can reassess, but today I will continue. And then tomorrow comes and they make the same choice again, persisting one day at a time, one step at a time, until eventually they break through to the other side. Marden encourages you to view your life as a grand experiment in what's possible when you commit fully to your potential, when you refuse to settle for less than you're capable of becoming, when you bring an iron will to the pursuit of your deepest purpose. This isn't about perfection or never making mistakes or always getting it right. It's about showing up consistently, learning continuously, adjusting constantly, and never, ever giving up on what matters most. The world needs your iron will. It needs what you'll create when you stop holding back, when you stop playing small, when you fully commit to your purpose and persist until you succeed. There are problems only you can solve, contributions only you can make, people only you can help, impact only you can have, but only if you develop the iron will required to bring your gifts fully into the world. Think about the ripple effects of your transformation when you develop an iron will and achieve things you once thought impossible. You don't just change your own life, you inspire everyone watching. You give them permission to attempt their own impossible goals. You prove through your example that ordinary people can do extraordinary things through determination. Your children see that persistence pays off. Your friends see that change is possible. Your colleagues see that excellence is achievable. And some of them are inspired to raise their own standards, to strengthen their own will, to pursue their own dreams more courageously. This is how the world changes, not through one massive transformation, but through millions of individuals deciding to stop settling, to start building an iron will, to commit to becoming everything they're capable of being. Your transformation matters not just for you, but for everyone your life touches, now and in the future, in ways you'll never fully know. Marden delves deeply into the concept that an iron will must be sustained by clear mental imagery, by a vivid vision of what you're working toward that becomes so real in your mind that it pulls you forward even when external circumstances push you back. This isn't idle daydreaming or wishful fantasy. This is the deliberate practice of holding your goals in your consciousness with such clarity and conviction that your actions naturally align with achieving them. The most successful people, Marden observed, carried with them a mental picture of their desired outcome that was as clear and detailed as a photograph. They could see themselves achieving their goals, feel what success would feel like, imagine the specific circumstances of their achievement. This mental rehearsal wasn't escapism, it was preparation. It was programming their subconscious mind to recognize opportunities and solutions that would move them toward their vision. It was creating an internal magnet that attracted the resources, relationships, and insights they needed. When you develop this kind of clear mental imagery combined with an iron will to make it real, something powerful happens in your psychology. The gap between your current reality and your envisioned future creates a productive tension that motivates action. Your mind naturally seeks to resolve the discrepancy between where you are and where you want to be. And this seeking manifests as ideas, energy, persistence, and resourcefulness. But this only works if your vision is specific and emotionally compelling. If it genuinely excites you, if it represents something you truly want rather than something you think you should want, or something others expect of you. Vague goals like be successful or be happy don't create the necessary mental and emotional pull. They're too abstract, too undefined to activate your deeper motivational systems. Instead, your vision should be concrete enough that you could describe it in detail. What specifically will you have accomplished? What will your daily life look like? How will you feel? What impact will you be making? Who will you have become in the process of achieving this goal? The more vividly you can imagine these details, the more powerfully your vision will fuel your iron will during difficult times. Marden also explores the relationship between physical vitality and mental willpower, recognizing that these two dimensions of human capacity are deeply interconnected. You cannot sustain an iron will if you're chronically depleted physically, if you're not getting adequate sleep, nutrition, exercise, and rest. Your body is the vehicle through which your will expresses itself in the world, and if that vehicle is poorly maintained, even the strongest determination will be hampered. This means that developing an iron will include taking responsibility for your physical well-being. treating your body with the respect and care it deserves, understanding that every choice you make about what you eat, how you move, how you rest, directly impacts your capacity for sustained effort and focused attention. The person who stays up until 2 in the morning scrolling social media and then wonders why they lack the willpower to pursue their goals is missing the connection between physical state and mental strength. Sleep particularly deserves attention because it's during sleep that your brain consolidates learning, processes experiences, repairs itself, and prepares for the next day's challenges. Chronic sleep deprivation doesn't just make you tired, it impairs decision-making, reduces emotional regulation, weakens impulse control, and diminishes your capacity for sustained attention, all of which are essential for maintaining an iron will. Similarly, nutrition affects your mental functioning more than most people realize. Your brain is an energy-intensive organ that requires consistent fuel to operate optimally, and what you eat determines the quality of that fuel. Eating in ways that create blood sugar spikes and crashes, that deprive your brain of essential nutrients, that burden your digestive system and create inflammation, all of this impacts your cognitive performance and therefore your ability to maintain discipline and persistence. Exercise has profound effects not just on physical health, but on mental resilience. When you exercise regularly, you're literally strengthening your capacity to push through discomfort, to keep going when you want to stop, to maintain effort over time. Every workout is practice in applying your will to a challenging task. Every time you complete a difficult exercise, you're proving to yourself that you can do hard things, building evidence of your own capability. Beyond these basic factors, Marden emphasizes the importance of managing stress and cultivating periods of genuine rest and renewal. An iron will isn't about constant grinding without breaks. That path leads to burnout and breakdown. Instead, it's about intense focused effort punctuated by real recovery, working hard when you work, but then fully disengaging to rest, play, connect with loved ones, engage in activities that restore your energy and spirit. The people who sustain high performance over decades, rather than burning out after years, understand this rhythm. They work with tremendous intensity and focus during work periods, but they also protect time for restoration. They take real breaks where they're not checking email or thinking about work. They engage in hobbies and activities that have nothing to do with their career goals. They prioritize relationships and experiences that remind them why they're working so hard in the first place. This balance isn't weakness or lack of commitment, it's wisdom. It's understanding that you're running a marathon, not a sprint, that sustainable success requires sustainable practices, that you need to manage your energy as carefully as you manage your time. The iron will includes the discipline to rest when rest is needed, to say no to extra work when you're already at capacity, to protect your well-being so you can continue contributing at high levels for years and decades. Marden dedicates significant attention to the role of concentration and focused attention in developing an iron will. In his era, distractions were far fewer than what we face today, yet he still recognized that the ability to focus deeply on a single task or goal without being pulled away by competing demands was essential for achievement. How much more important is this now, when we're constantly bombarded with notifications, advertisements, entertainment options, and information? The iron will in our modern context must include the capacity to control your attention, to decide what deserves your focus, and then maintain that focus despite countless things competing for it. This is perhaps one of the most challenging aspects of developing willpower today, because the forces working to fragment your attention are so powerful, so pervasive, so deliberately engineered to be addictive. Every time you allow your attention to be hijacked by something trivial when you meant to focus on something important, you weaken your will. Every time you let yourself get pulled into scrolling social media when you plan to work on your goals, you're training yourself in distraction rather than discipline. Every time you surrender control of your attention to whatever is loudest or most novel or most immediately gratifying, you're moving away from the iron will you're trying to build. Conversely, every time you notice your attention wandering and deliberately bring it back to what matters, you strengthen your will. Every time you choose depth over distraction, sustained focus over superficial engagement, you're building the neural pathways that support concentration. Every time you protect blocks of time for focused work and defend them against interruptions, you're practicing the kind of intentionality that separates achievers from drifters. This requires creating an environment that supports focus rather than fragments it, turning off notifications, removing temptations, setting up physical spaces dedicated to deep work, establishing routines that signal to your brain it's time to concentrate. It requires being honest about how you actually spend your time, rather than how you think you spend it or wish you spent it, tracking where your hours go and making deliberate changes to align time use with priorities. The practice of concentration also involves learning to work in a state of flow, that magical condition where you're so absorbed in what you're doing that time disappears. Effort feels effortless, and you produce your best work. Flow happens when the challenge of a task matches your skill level, when you have clear goals and immediate feedback, when you can focus without interruption for extended periods. Cultivating flow requires that you structure your work appropriately, not taking on tasks so far beyond your current abilities that you become frustrated and overwhelmed, but also not settling for tasks so far below your abilities that you become bored and disengaged. It requires clarity about what you're trying to accomplish in any given work session and having ways to assess whether you're making progress. It requires protecting time blocks of at least 90 minutes where you can sink deeply into important work without interruption. When you regularly experience flow, work that once felt like drudgery becomes engaging, progress that once felt slow accelerates, satisfaction that once felt elusive becomes your regular experience. Flow is both a product of iron will, the discipline to set up conditions that allow it, and a builder of iron will, because the deep satisfaction of flow states motivates you to maintain the practices that produce them. Marden also addresses the social dimension of developing an iron will, recognizing that humans are profoundly influenced by the expectations, standards, and behaviors of those around them. This social influence can either support your development or undermine it, depending on whether you're surrounding yourself with people who elevate you or people who pull you down. The people in your life communicate through thousands of subtle signals what they believe is normal, possible, acceptable, admirable. If you spend significant time with people who complain constantly, who avoid responsibility, who mock others' ambitions, who settle for mediocrity, these attitudes seep into your own thinking, even if you're consciously trying to resist them. It's like trying to stay clean while swimming in mud, possible for a short time but ultimately futile. On the other hand, if you deliberately cultivate relationships with people who are pursuing meaningful goals, who take responsibility for their lives, who celebrate others' success, who hold themselves to high standards, you naturally elevate your own standards and expectations. You see what's possible through their example. You're inspired by their progress. You're held accountable by their presence. You're supported when you struggle. This doesn't mean you should abandon everyone in your life who isn't currently achieving at high levels. That would be cruel and short-sighted. It means being thoughtful about who has the most access to you, whose voices are loudest in your head, who you're spending your discretionary time with, who you're allowing to influence your thinking and your choices. It also means being the kind of person who elevates others, who models the iron. What you want to see in your community, who encourages people to pursue their potential rather than mocking their efforts, who celebrates victories and offers genuine support during struggles. As you develop your own iron will and begin achieving your goals, you have both an opportunity and a responsibility to help others do the same, not by preaching or pushing, but by example and encouragement. The relationship between iron will and adversity is one of the most profound themes Marden explores. He observes that adversity isn't just something to be endured on the path to success, it's often the very force that creates the iron will necessary for great achievement. The people who've accomplished the most remarkable things are frequently people who face the most remarkable challenges, not because hardship guarantees success, but because responding to hardship with determination rather than defeat builds extraordinary strength. Consider the person who grows up in comfortable circumstances with every advantage, who never faces significant obstacles or setbacks, who achieves moderate success through moderate effort. Now, consider the person who grows up in difficult circumstances with many disadvantages, who faces obstacle after obstacle, who must work tremendously hard just to survive, let alone thrive, and who develops through this process an iron will that eventually propels them to extraordinary achievement. The first person might live a pleasant life, but they're unlikely to develop the deep reservoirs of resilience, determination, and resourcefulness that come from overcoming genuine adversity. The second person might have a harder journey, but if they respond to their challenges with will rather than victimhood, they often develop capacities far beyond what comfortable circumstances would have produced. This isn't to romanticize hardship or suggest that suffering is good or necessary. It's simply to recognize that difficulty, when met with the right mindset, can be transformative. It's to understand that the obstacles you're facing right now, the challenges that feel overwhelming, the circumstances that seem unfair, these aren't just things happening to you. They're opportunities to strengthen your will, to prove to yourself what you're capable of, to develop the character and capabilities that will serve you for the rest of your life. The question isn't whether you'll face adversity. You will, everyone does. The question is how you'll respond to it. Will you let it break you or will you let it make you? Will you use it as an excuse for giving up or as fuel for pressing forward? Will you see yourself as a victim of circumstances or as someone who grows stronger through challenging circumstances? Marden shares countless examples of people who faced adversity that would have crushed most people, but who responded with such determination that they turned their obstacles into opportunities, their setbacks into setups for comebacks, their limitations into launching pads. The key in every case was the choice to respond to difficulty with will rather than resignation, with action rather than despair, with faith in possibility rather than acceptance of defeat. This choice isn't always easy. In fact, it's often excruciating, especially in the immediate aftermath of a major setback or loss or failure. There's a period where you need to grieve, to feel the pain, to acknowledge the difficulty. Trying to skip over this and jump straight to positive thinking is neither healthy nor effective. But at some point, after you've felt what you need to feel, you face a choice. Will you stay in that place of pain and defeat, or will you gather your strength and start moving forward again? The iron will says, I will feel this fully, but I won't dwell in it forever. I will acknowledge this setback, but I won't let it define me. I will learn whatever lessons this experience has to teach, and then I will use those lessons to become stronger, wiser, more capable. This isn't the end of my story, it's a chapter in my story, and I will determine what the next chapter contains. As Marden examines the lives of great achievers, he notes a pattern that's both inspiring and instructive. Almost all of them had moments where they were ready to give up, where continuing seemed pointless, where defeat seemed certain, but something inside them refused to surrender. Sometimes it was remembering their purpose. Sometimes it was thinking about people depending on them. Sometimes it was sheer stubbornness. Sometimes it was a moment of inspiration or encouragement that arrived at exactly the right time. What matters isn't why they continued, but that they did continue, that they pushed through that moment of maximum doubt and despair and kept going. And often that moment turned out to be right before their breakthrough, right before circumstances shifted in their favor, right before their efforts finally produced the results they'd been working toward. If they had quit when they felt like quitting, they never would have known how close they were to success. This is why Marden counsels persistence beyond the point where persistence seems rational. Persistence when you can't see any evidence that your efforts are working. Persistence when everyone around you is advising you to give up. Persistence when your own mind is offering you 1,000 logical reasons to stop. Because breakthrough often comes at the point where most people quit. And the only way to discover if you're at that point is to keep going. Now, this requires wisdom and discernment. There's a difference between productive persistence and stubborn foolishness, between pushing through temporary obstacles toward a sound goal and beating your head against a wall that will never break. The iron will isn't about being unable to recognize when something truly isn't working and needs to be abandoned. It's about not giving up prematurely on things that are working but just haven't produced visible results yet. How do you tell the difference? Marden suggests evaluating whether you're making any progress at all, even if it's slower than you hoped. If you're developing capabilities even if you're not yet achieving outcomes, if the goal itself is still meaningful to you or if you've outgrown it, if continuing serves your purpose or if it's just ego refusing to admit defeat. These are questions that require honest self-reflection and sometimes external perspective from trusted advisors. But in most cases, people quit too soon rather than too late. They give up because it's hard, not because it's impossible. They surrender because progress is slow, not because no progress is possible. They stop because they're tired of the struggle, not because the goal isn't worth the struggle. If you're genuinely pursuing something meaningful, if you're developing as a person through the pursuit even apart from the outcome, if you still believe in the worthiness of your goal, the answer is usually to persist. The book explores how iron will relates to moral courage, to standing up for what's right even when it's costly. even when others oppose you, even when doing so puts you at risk. This is perhaps the highest expression of an iron will, using your determination and strength not just to achieve personal goals but to make a stand for principle, to defend the vulnerable, to speak truth when silence would be easier. History's most admired figures often demonstrated this kind of moral courage. They refused to go along with injustice even though resisting brought them enormous suffering. They spoke unpopular truths even though doing so cost them relationships and opportunities. They stood firm in their principles, even when standing firm meant standing alone. Their iron will wasn't just about accomplishing things, it was about being true to their deepest values regardless of consequences. This kind of courage requires that you've done the work of clarifying your values, of deciding what you truly stand for, what lines you won't cross, what principles you'll uphold even when it's hard. Without this clarity, you're vulnerable to compromising bit by bit, justifying small betrayals of your values that accumulate into larger ones, gradually losing your moral center in pursuit of convenience or advantage. But when you're clear about your values and you've developed an iron will to honor them, you become someone people can trust, someone who does what's right, not what's easy, someone whose word means something, someone who can be counted on to maintain integrity under pressure. This kind of character is rare and therefore valuable, both in personal relationships and professional contexts. The world desperately needs more people with this combination of iron will and moral courage, people who will persist in doing good even when it's difficult, who will speak up against wrong even when it's dangerous, who will stand for principle even when it's lonely. Your development of an iron will can serve purposes far greater than personal achievement. It can make you into someone who helps bend the arc of history toward justice, who protects people who can't protect themselves, who improves the world through both what you build and how you build it. Marden also examines the relationship between iron will and creativity, a connection that might not be immediately obvious. We tend to think of willpower as grinding discipline and creativity as flowing inspiration. But in reality, creative achievement requires enormous will. The artist who completes great works, the inventor who brings new technologies into existence, the writer who finishes books, the musician who masters their instrument. All of these require not just talent or inspiration, but the iron will to work consistently, to push through blocks and frustrations, to persist until the vision becomes reality. Most creative people will tell you that inspiration is unreliable. It comes and goes unpredictably, and if you only work when inspired, you'll accomplish very little. The productive creator works regardless of inspiration, showing up daily to practice their craft, putting in the hours even when the work feels like drudgery, trusting that consistent effort produces results even when any single session feels unproductive. This requires iron will, the determination to maintain your creative practice even when you're not feeling it, even when what you're producing seems mediocre, even when you'd rather be doing anything else. It requires faith that the cumulative effect of consistent work will produce outcomes you can't yet see, that quantity eventually produces quality, that showing up is more important than feeling inspired. The same principle applies to innovation in any field. Breakthroughs come to people who persist in experimenting, testing, refining, trying again and again until they find what works. The iron will to continue experimenting after repeated failures, to maintain curiosity and determination when most people would have given up. This is what separates innovators from everyone else who had good ideas but didn't pursue them long enough to make them real. As we move toward the conclusion of this exploration, let's consider the legacy dimension of developing an iron will. Your life is creating a legacy. Whether you're intentional about it or not, you're modeling something for people who observe you. You're creating outcomes that will outlast you. You're making impacts that ripple forward in ways you'll never fully know. The question is whether that legacy will be something you're proud of or something you regret. When you develop an iron will and use it in service of worthy goals, when you persist through difficulties and maintain your integrity and create value for others, you're building a legacy of strength, contribution, and character. You're showing younger people what's possible through determination. You're creating things that help others. You're solving problems that improve conditions for those who come after you. You're demonstrating that a life of purpose and persistence matters. Alternatively, if you let your will remain weak, if you consistently choose comfort over challenge, if you allow your potential to remain unrealized, you're still creating a legacy. but it's a legacy of what could have been, of gifts unshared, of problems unsolved, of potential unfulfilled. And while there's no judgment in this, while everyone gets to choose their own path, there is something tragic about reaching the end of life and realizing you had so much more to give but didn't because you never developed the will to fully show up. Marden wants you to understand that developing an iron will isn't just about achieving more or having more or being more successful by conventional measures, though those things may come. It's about becoming fully yourself, actualizing your potential, making the contribution you're uniquely positioned to make. Living in a way that when you reach the end of your life, you can look back with satisfaction rather than regret. This is your one life. These are your days. This is your time. What will you do with it? Will you drift along letting circumstances determine your trajectory? Letting comfort and convenience and the path of least resistance dictate your choices, letting your potential remain forever. Potential never fully realized? Or will you make a different choice starting now? Will you commit to developing an iron will, to pursuing your deepest purpose with unwavering determination, to becoming everything you're capable of becoming? The choice is yours. It always has been. And the time to choose is now, not someday, not when circumstances are perfect, not when you feel ready, but now, today, this moment. Because that's all you ever have, this moment, and what you do with it determines everything. Build your iron will one decision at a time, one day at a time, one challenge at a time, and watch as your life transforms in ways you never imagined possible. The journey begins with a single step, and that step begins right now. Stop waiting for permission, for the perfect moment, for complete clarity about every detail of the path ahead. Just begin. Take action on something you know you should do. Prove to yourself that you can keep a commitment. Start building the evidence that you have what it takes. As you do this, as you practice this day after day, you'll notice changes, at first subtle, then increasingly dramatic. You'll find that things that once seemed impossibly difficult become challenging but achievable. You'll notice that your tolerance for discomfort expands, that you can persist longer and work harder than you thought possible. You'll discover resources within yourself you didn't know existed, capabilities that emerge only when demanded by necessity. You'll also notice changes in how others respond to you. People sense determination. They respect follow-through. They're attracted to strength of purpose. As you develop your iron will, you'll find that opportunities appear that weren't there before, that people offer help and support and collaboration, that doors open because you've become someone capable of walking through them and making good use of what's on the other side. Most importantly, you'll notice changes in how you see yourself, in your sense of what's possible for your life, in your confidence that you can handle whatever challenges arise, in your conviction that you're the author of your destiny rather than a victim of circumstances. This transformation in self-concept is perhaps the most valuable outcome of developing an iron will, because once you see yourself as someone capable, someone determined, someone who does what they commit to doing, that identity becomes self-reinforcing, making future growth easier and faster. The path of the iron will isn't always smooth. There will be setbacks and frustrations and moments of doubt. But if you persist, if you maintain your commitment to your purpose, if you keep getting back up every time you're knocked down, you will eventually break through to a life of achievement, contribution, and deep satisfaction. You will become someone you're proud to be, someone others admire and respect, someone making a real difference in the world. And perhaps most beautiful of all, as you develop your iron will and transform your own life, you give others permission to do the same. You prove through your example that change is possible, that ordinary people can do extraordinary things, that determination can overcome disadvantages, that who you've been doesn't limit who you can become. Your transformation becomes a beacon of hope for everyone who witnesses it, inspiring them to begin their own journey of developing an iron will. If this exploration of Marden's timeless wisdom has moved you, if these ideas have awakened something within you, if you're feeling the stirring of determination to finally develop the iron will that will transform your life, then please take a moment to like and subscribe to Audiobook Library. When you like and subscribe, you're not just supporting a channel, you're joining a community of growth-oriented people who are committed to becoming their best selves, who understand that personal development is a lifelong journey, who support each other in the pursuit of excellence and purpose and contribution. Your subscription helps this channel continue bringing you transformative content like this. summaries and insights from the greatest books ever written on personal development, motivation, achievement, and human potential. It allows us to reach more people with these life-changing ideas, to build a larger community of individuals committed to developing their iron will and using it to create better lives and a better world. So please, hit that like button right now. Click subscribe, turn on notifications so you never miss new content, and consider sharing this with someone you care about who could benefit from developing their own iron will. Together, we're building something special here. A community that believes in human potential, that commits to continuous growth, that understands that success is built through discipline, determination, and an iron will that refuses to surrender to obstacles. Thank you for investing this time in yourself, for being willing to explore these ideas, for considering how you might apply them to transform your own life. The fact that you've stayed with this message, that you've absorbed these principles, that you're thinking about how to develop your own iron will, this already sets you apart. This already indicates that you have what it takes to achieve extraordinary things. Now the work begins. Now you take what you've learned and apply it. Now you start building your iron will through daily decisions that align with your purpose and values. Now, you commit to the journey of becoming everything you're capable of being. The world is waiting for your contribution, for what you'll create when you stop holding back, for the impact you'll have when you fully develop and deploy your iron will in service of something meaningful. Your life is a gift. Your potential is vast. Your opportunity is now. Go forth and build your iron will. Pursue your purpose with unwavering determination and create a life that reflects your deepest values and highest aspirations. The journey won't always be easy, but it will be worth it. And years from now, when you look back on this moment, on this decision to finally commit to developing your iron will, you'll recognize it as the turning point, as the moment everything changed, as the day you stopped settling and started becoming who you were always meant to be.